Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, today's webinar will be on Clip Studio Paint and how to animate within the program. It will be presented by Reuben Lara. Before we begin the webinar, we have a few housekeeping items that I'd like to share with you. The webinar will be approximately 1 hour long. All attendees will be muted. The Q&A session will be during the last 15 minutes of the webinar. Attendees can ask questions in the GoToWebinar question box right away, so please start that as soon as you have any questions. Due to time constraints, not all questions will be answered. The webinar will be recorded and will be shared with all the folks that have registered and all the attendees as well. And as well, you'll see it on social media. The Clip Studio social media as well as the Graphixly social media sites will have those recordings available for everyone to view. Today's panelists are myself, Fahim Niaz, Joanna Brower from Celsius, and as well Reuben Lara, who will be leading the webinar. For those of you who've never heard of Clip Studio Paint is your all-in-one solution for stunning, ready-to-publish illustrations, comics, manga, and animations. For more information, please visit us at clipstudio.net/en or graphixly.com. And with that, today's webinar will be on learning how to animate in Clip Studio Paint with Reuben Lara. I will be passing the reins of the webinar on to Reuben for him to share his screen now.
All right, can you see? All right, looks like everyone
Yes.
looks like we're on board here. Okay, good.
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, well, hey everyone, my name is Reuben Lara, and special thanks to Graphixly and Celsius for inviting me. I feel super special and honored to be hosting the first animation process webinar, so thank you so much. Well, just a little bit about myself. I'm a freelance illustrator and motion graphics artist, currently working out of Western Massachusetts here in the US. And I've only been using Clip Studio Paint for about 6 or 7 years, but it has become hands down my main tool for illustration and concept work. Between its amazing drawing tools and more recently, because I can just work seamlessly between my iPad and my desktop, I really haven't found a more flexible or powerful suite of tools as the ones in Clip Studio Paint, just for good old-fashioned drawing. And when it comes to animation, I really think Clip Studio Paint holds a unique place with lots of potential for new budding 2D animation studios, because animation is an expensive process. It's a lot of work, and as projects become more complex, it requires a small army of artists. So if you have to buy and train on expensive software like Toon Boom, Harmony, or TV Paint, or Adobe Animate for every animator and cell shader on a project, well, those costs can easily freeze a production. But at $50 a seat, or whatever price is being offered, Clip Studio is being offered at, and with a software that has workflows strikingly similar to other apps like Photoshop, you can assemble a small army of artists on a very small budget. And that is huge to me because I am a small animation studio. So I really look forward to see how Celsius keeps polishing the animation toolset in Clip Studio Paint. So what I'm showing here is just a few scenes from a couple of projects. All the characters have been individually animated in Clip Studio Paint and then composited in After Effects. And I think that's going to be the sweet spot where Clip Studio Paint sits for most productions at this point, at least. Just having the power to get those little individual pieces out the door for compositing on larger projects. So, okay, let's get started. Today, we are going to talk about two important things. First, having an efficient working environment. And second, two basic ways of making drawings in Clip Studio Paint, and that's frame by frame and using motion keyframes. So just real quick about our workspace. One of the biggest problems I see with anyone using any software is that their workspace just has an overwhelming amount of options in front of them. And again, this is one of the most powerful things about Clip Studio Paint too, is its customizability. What I need to do is I need to get rid of 3/4 of the things on my screen, determine what process I'm in the middle of, and just expose the tools and palettes that I need for that particular process. So because we're talking about animation, I've already kind of preset that up for myself. So I'll just reload my animation workspace. And this is how I like to have my space here. Let me just drop my timeline a little bit. I have all of my layers on the right hand side of my screen, I've collapsed, you know, my subtool detail, my tool property. In fact, I most often don't even need my toolbar because everything I need is set up here in the quick access panel. So I got my timeline at the bottom, my layers on the right, my most used tools inside my quick access panel. And now I'm really ready for just an uncluttered experience. And it gives me, you know, even greater real estate, of course, depending on even where I'm working. This is especially true if I'm on something like an iPad. So just getting in the habit of finding workspaces for each one of your processes, I think, is super important. That's especially true in animation because there's so many different functions and stages to the process. You just want to get rid of as much as you can. If you have questions about how to set up your workspace, kind of like what I've done here, or moving palettes around, definitely go check out my YouTube video called My Clip Studio Paint Setup. And I just really slowly go through the process of how to move palettes around and also how to set up your quick access panel. Just real brief here on my particular quick access panel, I have all my most used mark making tools at the top, as well as the two main moving tools, the regular move tool, as well as the object selection tool, which I'll talk about a little bit later, an important selection tool in animation. It's rarely used when you're illustrating, so that's why I just want to call it out. Then I have just a set of swatches that I tend to use often. Having the black and white and transparency swatches right here helps me just close my color sliders. I don't even need that on the screen. And then I'll often, just for note taking or for making line of actions or something, I'll just want to quickly hit those colors there. It's real easy to add colors in there. I can just show that real quick. If we just open our color wheel, and if I just want to add something like this, I just go to my menu, quick access settings, and where was that again? No, right here, right click, add drawing color. There we go. And then we just get that color right there. So real easy way to add your colors in there. Here I have some lasso selection tools. And then the bottom half of my quick access panel is basically almost everything in the animation menu. Just about everything's in there. And it's the things I used most often. So again, constantly going to the menu and then just remembering, was it an edit track or time? You know, I can't remember all that stuff. So for a few things I've set shortcuts up for, but for most all of the timeline functions, I just have a quick icon that I can access really quickly. The other thing I want to call out is that if you do set something like this, at the time of this recording at least, Clip Studio does not ship with icons for many of the animation functions. So when you drag them into your quick access panel, it'll look something like this, where a lot of them are just this little video clip. So you can feel free to hop on over to my Gumroad channel, my Gumroad store. I think there's going to be a link in the description to grab the custom icons that I've made for this. And there's also a set of actions that automatically set the onion skin settings to be, you know, 1 in front, 1 in 1, 0, 1, 2 and 2, and 5 and 5, along with the company icon. So those are actions I use all the time. That's included in the pack. And if you find it helpful, definitely go and grab it. Okay, next. So in celebration of International Jazz Day, I made this very cool jazz cat, and inspired by the great Esperanza Spalding. And plus, my wife also plays the double bass, which I think is super, super cool. So here's what she looks like once she's been composited and moving around on the screen. Let me play that. So it's just a little bass loop, but there's multiple layers of animation in here between frame by frame keyframing and motion keyframing that we're going to go over today. So what we're going to do today is animate an accompanying character, incredibly called Drumcat. And here's what he looks like so far. So same loop, got him on the snare drum, and what I have come to know now is called the ride cymbal. So that's one of the other cool things about animating, a bunch of research all the time. So let's call out a couple things that are happening here. The two basic ways of animating, again, is with multiple drawings or using one drawing with motion keyframes. So I'll play these again. So you can clearly see that the arm is made up of, in this case, 4 drawings. and the right arm is made up of 3 drawings, but the symbol is just 1 drawing, and that's being rotated around a pivot with keyframes, and that stops me from having to draw that symbol over and over and over and over again. So that's super helpful for mechanical things, or just when it's not efficient to be drawing, an entire object over and over if it's just moving across the screen and not changing shape at all. So we'll also be learning how to do some of those keyframes as well. So let's see what this file looks like. It may seem like a lot of information here, but I'm just going to turn all this off for now. And we're going to just start off with our static cat layer. And one of the things I want to point out is that the timeline panel is a 1-to-1 representation of our layers panel. So if I just click here on my folder and I add a new layer, you'll see that a layer is added in the layers panel, but also in my timeline. And that's because when you're working in an animation environment, whether or not a drawing is moving or animated, it still is existing in time. So it has to show up in the layers panel. And that's why, let me just delete this here, even if there is a static object, it's still represented in this span where this clip is stretching over multiple seconds. But one of the nice things about that is you can determine when that static object is showing on the screen or not. So for example, I'm just going to move to an arbitrary frame here. I'll right click on the span and we'll just say split clip. So here I also have a button for that. So I'll just split that clip. And now both ends of my clip have transformation zones or clipping zones, and I can just move this over. So now you see that this drawing, which is static at this point, is now showing on and off at these points in the timeline. So that's kind of like the most basic, we might say the most basic way of even animating, just animating the existence of something on the timeline or not. So I'm going to move these together, shift click both of these, and I can right click, right, and say merge clips, or I'll just use my little button here, and those clips have been merged. All right, I got my drum kit here. Those are also static. Now I have my right arm, and you can see that that is a series of 3 different drawings as I click right here in my layers palette. And as soon as I click, it goes right to that spot in the timeline where they're showing. And you can see that and focus on this right arm right here, this 1A211. These are the corresponding drawings in my layers palette. And you can see here in my timeline that all this is one span that's been duplicated over and over in this loop. So I'll just go ahead and play that. Here we go, it's lining up the audio now. So this again shows us how these spans of animated folders work. So for example, I'm just going to go ahead and shift click each one of these segments. We'll right click and say, we'll delete that clip. And you could be working on this one, adjusting timing. So we'll just go ahead and copy and then come over here, right click and hit paste. And so that's an easy way of just looping. So I'm going to hit those 2. I'm going to grab my copy button again, and I'll just come in here and just hit paste, and then I can just really populate that whole thing. And now I've done a further efficient thing, which is set a shortcut on my keyboard. I set mine to Shift Command C, or if you're on Windows, Shift Control C, because Control C is copy, so I just add Shift. So I'm gonna copy that, and I come over here, Shift Command V, and now I've just populated that whole timeline with this loop. There we go. Same thing's happening with the left arm. It's just a series of now 5 different drawings, and that's this row here has a little bit more information because of the double tap on the symbol, and same concept. So we got our 2 arms. Now we have our symbols. Got our China symbol on the right, our ride symbol on the left, and inside the ride symbol folder, we have a static image, which is the stand, and then we have the actual symbol that is the thing being animated. So let me show you what this looks like. Right here, we'll just drill down into our symbols folder just like it is on the layers palette. And you can see that the symbol folder now has this label called transform. And that's because we've enabled this little button called enable keyframes on this layer. And we're going to be animating something else on this document in the same way. But I just want to kind of highlight what's happening here. So if I open up this little plus and twirl this down, you can see now that the rotation field has keyframes, and that is what's rotating this little symbol around and around in the same loop. And again, I just made a clip out of it and then duplicated that clip over and over to time with the music. So far, 2 basic ways of moving these drawings around, frame by frame and with motion keyframes. So let's add a couple of things to this. I think what I want to do is, if you'll notice right here in the middle, in fact, I'm going to pull my my start and end of this animation back a little bit. This is an 8 kind of bar loop, so I'm going to do 4 on the back and 4 on the front. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, and that'll give us our clean clean loop there. Okay, so there's a little part in here where there's 2 hits on the tom drums. Just hear it again one more time. Right there. Okay, so we need to make them hit those 2 drums, kind of break that loop of the cymbal and the snare. But I kind of want to add a little more, and maybe I just thought maybe funny to have this little mouse kind of run across the drums, and maybe that's the reason why he's hitting those 2 things. So this is going to help us see another way of kind of getting drawings on the screen by planning them out first. So how can we plan out a little sequence and then turn that into a flipped, a flipped animated folder? And oftentimes this is how animators work, and it's really how you should be working with any kind of complex sequence, is thumbnailing your images first. So the way I started this is I brought another copy of my drum set onto a new document, and I just drew a line of action that I knew that this little mouse had to go. And I kind of just arbitrarily started right there. It's where I felt inspired to start. And whether I'm doing it on one layer or not, ultimately I want to separate these out into separate layers. But I just kind of started moving through, and seeing all the drawings on the screen really helped me get a sense of what this motion was like, and just this little scamper. Now, by no means are these all the drawings that are going to be in here. This is just a thumbnail working out of the basic motion that I'm looking for. But I think even at this point, we're getting a good sense of where he needs to be. So the next stage is to put these into flipped drawings into an animation folder. Now at this point, you should recognize this document as just a normal, right? This is just like a normal illustration. I only have a folder here with static drawings and another folder with static layers. So how do we turn that into an animated folder? Well, what we need to do is add an animation folder and throw the same drawings into an animation folder. So let's do that now. So I'm going to go ahead and click this button here on the timeline, which is add animation folder. It also appears right here in new animation layer animation folder. And we get an empty folder with no drawings. Now, usually we would click a new cell. As soon as I click new animation cell, look what happens right here on the right on the layer. It gives us a new blank layer and it assigns it in the timeline. But in this case, we already have drawings we want to put into the folder. So I'm just going to delete that drawing, and I will delete this cell assignment from that folder. So we're just kind of left with an empty animation folder. Well, now all we have to do is grab all of our drawings. I'm shift clicking all the way from top to bottom. I'm not going to include my line of action because that's not part of the animation. I'm just going to drag them right into the animation folder. So what we can see here now is the only difference between a regular folder and an animation folder is that a regular folder shows all layers at once. An animation folder only shows one at a time, and only the one that's been assigned on the timeline. Well, now that they're all in this folder, nothing is showing up here still, and that's because nothing is assigned in our timeline. So now all we have to do is go in here and use the specify cells command to specify which drawing should appear on this part of the timeline. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and as soon as I click specify cells, it goes and searches inside that animation folder and it shows me all the drawings that are in there and is asking me which one do I want to show first. So I'm going to click layer 17 copy and say okay, and sure enough, that one is showing there at the front. Now it's a really long name, and as soon as I put the other one in, another one in, it'll start kind of chopping those out. We don't want these big crazy long names, so let's do something. A really nice feature that I appreciate about Clip Studio is I'm going to grab the folder. I'm going to use this command, which is under let's see, edit track, rename in order of layers. I also have that as a shortcut here. So I'm just going to click it and watch what happens to all the names of all my layers. It automatically numbers them in sequential order, which is much more helpful for me. Because the first time I was doing it, I was just adding layers and layer copy and layer 13, and layer 21. I just didn't really care what it was because I knew I was going to be able to renumber them in order of the timeline. All right, so let's do that again. We can kind of come through here and re-specify our cells one by one, which can be tedious, or we can use the automatic function for specifying cells. And so that's under animation, edit track, batch specify cells. I also have a shortcut for that right here. It's a little link with the timeline on it. So I'm going to make sure I'm on my animation folder and click batch specify cells. It seems like a complicated little window because there's a lot of options, but what we want to do is just click the second radio button, specify name of existing cell, and it automatically detects how many drawings are in the current folder. So as long as my opening and closing time span blue lines are longer than the number of drawings I have, and I hit OK, it will automatically put all of those frames right into the folder. So now we have a little scampering mouse on a loop. Okay, so let's do a couple of things, and this will kind of show us some of the functionality of these timelines as well. If I drag this out, that last drawing, number 18, is the one that's just going to be showing for a while until it loops. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my onion skinning with this little button right here, just so we see one drawing at a time. And I definitely want him to be waiting, right, until those two drums show up, and then that's when we want him to scamper up. So drawing 14 is the one that I want him to be waiting at. So what I'm going to do is grab these and we'll cut them. I'm going to move all these over. Come over here and we'll say paste. All right, actually it was supposed to be drawing 14 up there. So we'll do that. We'll come here. We can cut that, come here and say paste. All right, so he's waiting. That's when he goes up the pole. We'll drag these back and he goes all the way around and then he waits again. So we need drawing 14 one more time, and that's okay because drawings can be reused in the timeline. All we need to do is specify that cell one more time, and now drawing 14 shows up twice. So now he's waiting, scampers around, and then it goes like that. Okay, it looks like I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Aha, drawing 2 is out of order here somewhere. Yes, it looks like I do have a drawing out of order. And let me find where that is real quick. So 1, 2. Yes, looks like 2 should be over here after 7 for some reason. So that would have been important to make sure my drawings are in the right order. Boom, boom. All right, there we go. Move that over. And looks like 1 more is out of order here. So he's going down. Oh yeah, 2 just needs to go in front of 7. Move that over. So this is good. You can kind of see that even if I make a mistake early on, there's some flexibility to kind of keep moving those drawings around. And this is another thing I love about Clip Studio is like you really can't break it. You have your drawings and you have your timeline specifications, and yeah, you can just keep fussing with it until it's right. Okay, so we got that little mouse loop going, and another thing I love about Clip Studio, we'll just call this pesky mouse, is that you can copy and paste just about anything between documents. So while this copy and paste functions, these copy and paste functions come from the timeline menu and they're specific to cells and timelines, the ones in the layer palette use the normal edit, copy, and edit paste. So I'm just going to grab here and say Command C or Control C. We'll go to our drum cat. I'll just come here to the top and paste that in. And that has been pasted over here. So we can just move that over to where we think the pesky mouse should be. And I'm gonna open up frame 14 so he's waiting. And then let's see what happens. Okay, so I'm noticing that the two tom drums are happening about right here. Raise up that volume a little bit. So I just want to move it over to the point where the mouse is kind of stomping on those drums right when he's going to be chased after. Maybe something like that. Okay, and we can keep moving that. All right, so next we want to do a couple of little animation loops where the cat sees the the mouse, and with his two hands he goes boom boom, and he kind of follows him on those two toms. Let's see how far we get. All right, the next thing I want to do before adding two more animation layers is once again, I'm always looking for opportunities to simplify what I'm looking at so that I don't get confused myself. There's a lot of layers here. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to turn layers into different colors, colors other than the ones that we're drawing with. So I'm going to be drawing with black. So let's turn everything else into a secondary color so that in my brain can just start almost ignoring those lines, but still see them in the background. The easiest way to do that is to use the layer color function, which I love this as well. So I have this here. I also have it up here in my command bar because sometimes my layers palette is a lot thinner than normal, but I'll just use this one in the layers palette right now. So all I need to do is click it, and that's it. It turns into that layer color. So I just wanted that to settle in the background. I also want my drum kits to settle down and just go like that. And we'll do the right and left arms. And you can multiple select these as well. I'm just kind of doing it one at a time. We'll do our pesky mouse. And let's make our mouse a different color. By clicking this little drop down, we'll click layer color, and we can just temporarily turn that into something else that we can see. And that's going to affect every instance of that folder wherever it goes. So already I'm feeling a little bit less overwhelmed with all the things happening on the screen. And let's do the same thing with all of our symbols. So I'll just grab that and turn that blue. So we've decluttered our space a little bit. Okay, next I want to add, I think I'm going to animate the two arms separately because I think that the timings are going to be just a little bit different. So let's go ahead and now instead of planning it out from the beginning with thumbnails, we're just going to kind of straight ahead and make these drawings. So the first thing I want to do is make a new animation folder. So I'll click that button in the timeline. Let's go ahead and name it right off the bat, and we'll call this right arm hit. All right. And let me just zoom in here. I'm not quite sure where the timing is at yet. I know it's somewhere between 49 and 54, but we can play around with it. But what this does show me is that within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drawings, both arms have to hit. So these hits aren't really going to take a lot of drawings, probably 3 or 4 drawings at the most. They're going to be really fast as this little mouse kind of scampers through. Because he's got to be ready now for the next loop of cymbals and snare drums right here. Okay, so right arm hit, and I'm going to go new. I just clicked new cell, new animation cell right there, and so it gave me a fresh drawing and a fresh spot right here on the timeline, a fresh assignment. So I'm going to grab my pencil, my black color, and I'm ready to draw. Tons of ways to go about this, and by no means am I the ultimate expert on best animation techniques. I have a lot to learn myself, but one thing that's been easy for me is just to kind of identify where these key poses are, and that is a fundamental concept, right, of animating, is hitting your key poses. So I'm gonna do that on this case, and right here I think I'm just gonna determine that he's really gonna be banging on this right here. Again, these are just really rough. This is a rough pass, right? We're gonna later on, when there's more time, we'll do a nice tie down. Not today, but so I'm just gonna draw this here. Again, we're just kind of getting a broad view of, or a broad sense of where these shapes need to be. I'm temporarily holding the E tool down to get to my eraser. So that's one. I'm gonna, now I'm gonna do this motion where he's kind of like raising his hand right before he hits it. So I'm gonna scoot this forward. And even though there's no clip here, if I hit new animation cell, it's gonna join me to that clip anyway. I'm not concerned about the numbers. I can always renumber stuff later as long as the cell assignments are in the correct place. So I'm gonna go onto my new drawing here, and I'm gonna turn on onion skinning so I can see my previous and last drawings. So Clip Studio by default shows the next drawing as green and the previous one as blue. And for a long time, I just could not get that straight in my head. But now I think about like a traffic signal, green, go. So now I remember that green is the next drawing. So, and you can change those colors too, but I just have never really bothered. But because the previous frame is going to be blue, let's change our drum cat, let's change the body and the arms to a different color. And let's do like orange. Too dark. That's fine. All right, so there's that. And now we want to have him kind of like whack it up. Now this is, apologies to my, anyone who knows what they're doing on the drums. This is not likely an appropriate drum way to beat this this tom drum, but he is whacking a mouse. So I'm gonna go with it. Okay, boom. And let's I think it's gonna be a bigger whack like this. Boom. Get out of there. Okay. And let's do the one where the hand kind of goes back to the snare, getting ready to do his rhythm again. So we'll kind of just do this. All right. Again, we'll really tie these shapes down, at a later date, but this is just rough animation here. All right. I think I'm gonna do one more where right before this, so just a little anticipation, excuse me, an anticipation move. Now here's where I've set up these actions for my onion skinning, because what you could do is every single time come into the into the show animation cells, onion skin settings, and then just change this to 1 and then change this to 1, and like now you're just seeing one at a time. You have to do that every single time, which is why I created this onion skin settings button. But even so, you just need to keep entering those numbers. So in that product that I showed you earlier, what I've set up are 4 actions that automatically set the onion skin settings to that amount. So now this is going to show me, like if I'm right here in the center, this is going to show me 1 ahead and 0 behind. This is 1 and 1, 0 behind, 1 ahead, and then 2 and 2 and 5 and 5. And I use the 5 and 5 to kind of see a big arc of motion, when I have lots of drawings and I can determine where my arcs are off and things like that. So, all right, I'm gonna go to 3. I got too many drawings. I just want to see the next one. So I'm gonna go 0 and 1. And in fact, I'm gonna turn off my symbols because I don't need them right now. All right, so I want to do maybe something where the stick is like this. And I'll be sharing this file, by the way, after the webinar, so you can kind of take a look and pull it apart and maybe make some improvements on your end. All right, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that's a good little whack, and it's quick. So the only thing we need to do now is make sure it hits in the right spot, and then we need to clip the previous arm so it's not showing underneath. I'm going to turn both arms off real quick, and this will help me determine if it's hitting the first drum in the right spot. I think it is. One more time. In fact, I'm going to come here and let's make this a little bit shorter. So there's 2 ways of making this clip shorter. One is by dragging it this way. The other one is by going up here into animation, edit track, set as last displayed frame, which I've set a shortcut because this is what the shortcut is in After Effects to to trim a layer, command bracket. But I've also have a little button here, so we'll just trim that, and now we just have those four drawings. All right, let's see what that looks like again. Yeah, I think that works. Okay, so that means that right here, I'm gonna go turn on my right arm, and then we're gonna trim that right before our right arm hit shows up, which it already is. And that means I just need to come here and drop that there. So now both arms will show. Good. All right, we have 10 minutes. Let's do the other arm. So let's do the same process. We'll go here, make a new folder, left arm, hit. And this is gonna happen just after the first hit. So we'll make a new animation cell there. We're gonna turn on our left arm so we can see what that looks like. Okay, and again, let's just start with the hit again, because I know where that is. And let's turn on our mouse too, our pesky mouse. Where does he go? He jumps about right there. Let's make it hit somewhere like right there. I think it's probably a good spot. Now let's do it a little bit further back because I want to feel like he's kind of trailing it a little bit. All right, and this time he's gonna kind of like pulling back his arm like this. And he's really whacking this like this. Maybe I'll just rotate that just a little more. This arm's a little more uncomfortable to smack that drum on. There we go. Boom. Okay, and let's do the this one. Let's make him really like whack this thing. I'm gonna try to like follow this kind of an arc. All right. Whack. Okay. All right, we got two drawings there. And let's do the return. So we'll go back to 1 and 1. Return back to the drum set. So that means at this point he's about to hit those cymbals twice. I think we're gonna want two. The cymbal hit is right there. Actually, no, the next cymbal hits are right here on the next bar. So we have a few frames that we can play around with. In fact, that means that we're going to be somewhere around there. Yeah, I think that's it. Of course, that depends on where that hit is. So let's listen to it first. Okay, so that has to be, I'm going to undo that last one. This has to be later. Just dragging that down. Okay, that looks good. So I think that hit is about in the right spot. Boom. So that means that the left arm has to disappear. Yeah, we got to be done by this frame anyway. So we don't have that many frames to play with. So that's going to be about right there. And then our 1A is going to end right there. So whack, whack. Okay, so it means we have one frame to play around with coming back to the arm. I'm gonna extend frame 3 out just so I can see it underneath. And let's do something like this. I want this kind of motion to kind of pull back in, where it kind of just eases right into that spot again. Like that. Something like that. All right, I'll pull drawing 3 out again. Let's test that out. Yeah, good. And because we have a few frames to play with up here, let's give a couple of frames of anticipation for the left arm. So let's go ahead and put another drawing up here. So that's our kind of our highest spot. And that wax. Let's bring this high spot here, put another drawing in there, and this one actually goes a little bit more. Like he's just flicking that wrist. I'm not sure if that's gonna, I mean, we don't have any frames in between after that, so let's just see if that does it. Yeah, I think that's a pretty strong hit. Okay, good enough for now. So just like whack, smacks that. And in fact, here we can even do a little bit of a smear, something like that. It'll give us a little bit of that motion. Okay, and then we have an opportunity for kind of raising up a little bit. All right, so we'll be coming from that drawing, the orange drawing underneath. So I'm gonna cut that off and then extend it just so I can see it. And let's do a little bit of an ease, which means that I'm closer to this one than I am to this one. So it's not a full like half in between. That'll just kind of ease right out. I want to follow that same nice kind of arc. All right, let's see what that does. We'll pull this back out. Okay, and now we just got to make sure that our mouse is running in the right spot. So now let's pull this back out. He's got to be hitting it just behind. Let's turn off our onion skin. Boom, boom, out. And let's turn on our symbols too, sorry, and save. Let's save this as O2. Okay. All right, turning on symbols. And what I'm going to do now, we're starting to get a good amount of layers here, so I'm just going to say render before starting playback, especially since we're kind of webcasting here too. Good, so he's scampering out of the way. The only last thing we need to do is extend our little mouse weight so that he's all the way through. And so we'll definitely be getting a lot more. Oh, you know what we should do too is put the mouse underneath these symbols. There we go. And that way he's kind of going behind the symbols. Good. And again, that's these are not even all the mouse movements that we could include. So probably if I had more time in here, I would add a couple of drawings so he can settle into that pose. So maybe 2 drawings between 13 and 14. And then as he scampers up, maybe like a little anticipation, like, okay, I'm ready to go, and boom, he, scurries up and does his little thing there. I still got 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes, because I just want to reinforce that now that we've added some frames, right, some frame-based animation, we can now go ahead and add just a little bit more movement to something that's static, like the cat head. So let's just do a quick keyframed maybe head bounce on the cat head, just so we can remember how to do that. And one thing I found, we can add motion keyframes right to this drawing, but I've kind of gone down a path before where I've done all of like this, sweet motion keyframing on a sketch layer, and then I have to do the final color pass, and then I have to transfer all of those keyframes to the final one, and it can tend to get a little bit convoluted. So before, whenever I'm motion keyframing any drawing, whether it's an animation folder or a static drawing, I like to put it in a folder first and then keyframe the folder. That way I can always stuff that folder with anything in there, whether it's another drawing or multiple layers of color work or whatever, and it just updates just fine. So the way to do that is to go up here to the menu, and we'll just say create folder and insert layer. I've already mapped that to Command G. That's like how it is in Photoshop. So I'll just Command G, and we'll call this head. And now the head is what we'll add keyframes to. So we'll find that same hierarchy down here under cat and head. Now we don't have the word transform on this because we haven't enabled keyframes yet. So I'm going to click this little motion thingy, whatever that is, a page, enable keyframes on this layer. Now the word transform shows up. Okay, now I can come in here and open up this little plus and then twirl this open. And it's going to give me all the possible factors or all the possible fields, attributes that can be animated. So right now I'm on create smooth interpolations, and we don't have to talk about that right now, but those are just different ways that the objects will move across the screen. So we'll just leave it on smooth for now. And the only one I want to do is position. If I don't highlight anything and I set a keyframe, then it will set a keyframe across everything, unless I just highlight one thing, and it's just going to do position for us. So, all right, now what we have to do is use our object selection tool, and this is really what I wanted to show you. If I try to move this around using the normal move layer tool, it will move this layer, but it's not adding. It won't necessarily add keyframes in all the right ways. So I want to make sure that I'm on the object selection tool, because what this gives me is it gives me a pivot point, and that's going to be crucial if I want to rotate this later on, whereas the move layer tool does not give me a pivot point. So the first thing I want to do is move this pivot somewhere around, where I think his neck is. Now, I don't know if I want to rotate his neck at all, but in case I do, then I'll have that there. And you'll see that as soon as I made that movement, our rotation center and our position properties were keyframed. So because this is a loop, I'm just going to go ahead and move forward, and I want to set the same keyframe right here on this very layer. Now you'll notice that this add keyframe button is grayed out. I believe that that is a bug in Clip Studio. At some point, some of these animation functions kind of decide not to highlight anymore, and then when I save and restart, it's there again. But it always exists in the animation layer. So I'm going to go here to edit track, and we'll just say add keyframe. All right, so I'm going to go here to the middle, and I'm just going to drop this down, make sure I'm on my object, on my head, and we will, okay, that is not dropping down either. Okay, maybe I do have to restart. All right, this is not a bad thing. So let's just, I do want to show you that in case you run into this, this is what's happening and it's not you. So let's just quit this real quick. We'll be done by 2:50. Okay, restart. I have found that with the latest couple rounds of updates, Clip Studio takes a little bit longer to restart and shut down, but it's pretty stable. All right, we'll open that again. That'll be Drumcato 2. Okay, you see how that highlight showed up again all of a sudden. All right, so we'll open that up, and now we'll go to our object tool, come to the middle, and we'll just move this down. Hey, why isn't that moving down? That's now I'm a little bit concerned. Okay, I'll use the keyboard shortcuts, and I will have to figure out why that's not doing later. But now we're just kind of adding that motion keyframe, and all I did was hit the arrows going down, and now we kind of have that little loop. Now, if we wanted to, we could also hit rotate, add a keyframe there, go to our last one, add a keyframe there, and if we hover around the edge of these transform handles, we're going to get that nice little rotation, right? So because we set our center, now we're getting that kind of nice little head bob. So let's turn this into a clip, and then we'll just duplicate that loop over and over. So we can either drag this down, or we can use that button there, and I'm going to Shift Control or Shift Command C. Again, that was a custom shortcut that I set up. And V, copy, paste, paste, paste. Good. So now we've kind of reviewed how to go about adding animation with individual drawings, also using the motion keyframes and understanding how even static layers relate to the timeline in Clip Studio Paint. So I think that's it. I hope that was helpful.
Okay, thank you very much for this really in-depth tutorial on animation. I learned a lot, definitely.
Good,
So
thank you.
thank you for that. I have a few questions. Let's start with a recap question. What is the difference between an animation cell and an animation folder?
Okay, that's a good question. So let me just make a new drawing real quick. So the animation folder is the thing that holds all of the animation drawings, right? So this layer right here outside of an animation folder is simply just a drawing. And this layer right here is simply just a drawing. But as soon as they go into an animation folder, both of these cells, if you will, turn into drawings that get shown only one at a time. And they only get shown one at a time when they're specified in the timeline. So the folder, animation folder, is what tells Clip Studio only show one thing at a time. And so when I go into the timeline and specify the second layer, it's the animation folder that's telling Clip Studio to do this flip. So again, if these are just in a normal folder, Clip Studio assumes that you just want to see them both at the same time.
Okay. So next one is also related to that. Can you show again how to duplicate a frame, but also duplicate a layer to use it on the same frame?
Yes. So duplicate a drawing to be used as another cell, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that's a kind of a common question. And there, I do wish maybe as Clip Studio keeps growing in its animation workflow, there might be able to be an easier way to do it with one command. What I've been doing recently, like let's say I want to make a frame 11 a new drawing. I'll show you two ways actually. And the second way I find is just a little bit easier. But I'm going to move 12, 13, and 14 over. Let me just make this a little bit larger. We'll go ahead and open our pesky mouse animation folder. And now I want an 11B with the exact same drawing. What I could do is come here to the animation, to the layers palette and duplicate the layer. That turns into 11A, but it's not showing up yet. We need to go here and specify as 11A. Now I have a true, if I turn on my onion skinning, I'm going to hit my move tool. Now I have a true duplicate, of this drawing to kind of come over. So that's one way. I find that to be a little bit cumbersome though. So what I like to do is I'm just going to duplicate. I'm going to delete that and I will unspecify that. So let's say I want to duplicate frame 11. So I just create a new folder and then I command or control click layer 11. What that does is it loads the selection. That's not specific to the animation pipeline, right? Even when you're illustrating, if you command or control click a layer, it's going to load whatever pixels were in that layer into a selection. And now I can just hit fill. And so I essentially have a duplicate. So I make a new cell and I command click whatever layer I want to duplicate and then just fill it.
Okay. Okay, next question. Can you recommend a canvas size for working on an animation sequence, such as a walk cycle, for example?
Yeah, well, that speaks to kind of a basic understanding of resolution. And so you want to be thinking about what your final output is. So standard HD is going to be 1920 by 1080, 1920 by 1080 pixels wide and high. But let's say later on in After Effects, I am going your final shot is going to be zooming in onto his face. So that means that this 1920 animation, like let's just say there's a guy here, right? And you have this like nice sweet line work or whatever. And it looks great from here, but now we zoom into his face and that's what it's gonna look like in your final production because you don't have enough resolution. So what you need to do is determine how close is this piece gonna ever be zoomed into and then size it appropriately. So what I would do is probably create a 1920 by 1080 drawing. So something like this, and I'm just gonna come here and let's see, let's go back to our tool panel here. I'm just gonna grab a shape, grab a rectangle, like this. Oops, I wanted to do that on a new layer. Okay, that's basically 1920 by 1080 size, right? So now what I need to do is I need to scale this guy up so that his face is this resolution, because that's how close we're gonna get, in After Effects or even in Clip Studio if you do a 2D camera move. So there's 1920 by 1080 full resolution. That means my animation needs to be much bigger. So in this case, right, my animation would have to be something like this. Oops, canvas properties. Nope, sorry, change canvas size. Let's just open that up and, might open this up a little bit. Right, so now I know that if I animate at this size, then when they zoom in at my HD frame, then at least my face will have enough resolution, which means that I'm starting my animation at 2150 by whatever 3500.
Okay. So regarding timelines and frames, how do you determine where to place a frame in the timeline?
Well, those are excellent questions, and why people have really value kind of taking an animation course. I did not go to school for animation. Most of what I know has come from my life drawing classes and just studying motion. Scott Eaton's Bodies in Motion page is an amazing resource. Let me just pull it up right here. Scott Eaton. Let me type in Bodies in Motion. And he takes high resolution movie frames of people doing tons of stuff. And so when you see people in motion, you start to understand that when people are going at fast speeds, then there's more distance between the previous drawing and the next. When people are going at slow speeds, then there's less distance between the previous drawing and the next. Then when we're talking about drawings on the timeline, ultimately you do want to have a drawing just about on every frame. That's kind of the goal. So the question is not necessarily, how far are they spread out on the timeline, but how far are your drawings in relation to each other? So you see when this mouse is kind of bouncing on the drum, these drawings are closer together than when he's flying through the air. It's because he's going fast and then he's going slow. Now, when you see something like this, where drawings are spread out, that's only because these drawings are hold frames, like nothing's happening. That's why that's spread out. But then as soon as something is happening, the goal is to have a drawing on every frame. If your budget can afford that.
Okay, wonderful. So a small technical questions, like how do you bring up the quick access palette? Do you have a shortcut for that one?
I don't have a shortcut. I just have it up all the time, but it's in Window, and it's right here, quick access. So this is like one of my main panels, and I have panels for animation. I have one for sketching, for painting, sketching. I do whiteboard animations too. There's only one thing in there. When I'm in the other modes, and by the way, this is a feature request for Clip Studio. I would love it if these tabs remembered what mode you were on, because, for example, in animation, there's enough different features where this is super helpful to me. And if I'm in list mode, if I go to list small, it's just like, it's way too small to be helpful. But when I'm painting, I do want to see the names of my brushes. That's super helpful. So that's the way to show both. So I do wish that once you set a mode for one of these, it would just stay that way. But I'm kind of constantly doing this back and forth between projects. But yeah, I have all my favorite tools in these different sections.
Okay. Um,
Take advantage.
we're taking the feedback. We're taking the feedback. Do you also use Clip Studio for storyboarding your animations?
Yes, absolutely. And I am planning on doing a YouTube video, or maybe, maybe another YouTube live session. I love storyboarding in Clip Studio, and it uses a lot of the foundation elements of what I just showed here, but there's like 2 or 3 more things that I really found super helpful, which I think is too much for me to go into right now, in terms of adjusting the lasso fill tool with this really cool trick that I've been using that I can't wait to show you, and also how to get your text in here and then easily get that text, between frames. So maybe that could be the subject of another video.
Yes. So something about your personal setup. What kind of tablet do you use, and what's the computer you're using?
I am on a 27-inch iMac that I've had for about 3 years. And right now I'm on a used Cintiq 21 UX that you can get on eBay. They're older machines, but they're absolute workhorses. I mean, I just love it. I do wish it was slightly more HD resolution. It's a little square, but it totally works for me. It was something I could afford, and I love it. It's not
Okay.
touch sensitive, but I'm using my keyboard most of the time anyway.
With the shortcuts and stuff.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, and then one last question, which you always get. Do you have any advice for people who are just starting out with animation?
Yes. Just don't be afraid. And I think this is why I love Clip Studio so much, is because it opens up this incredible skill set to just about anybody. I mean, if you can invest just a few $100s in a Wacom, and you don't even need a Cintiq. I mean, I worked for years on a flat gray Wacom tablet. It's not a screen, and you can still animate, or get the subscription on your iPad. It's totally worth it. It's not expensive. It's like, just a few dollars a month. My goodness. But what a tool to start animating in. And you're not going to get better until you just do it and make a bunch of mistakes. And I used to feel like, learning how to animate was only in the domain of, like these super special people who went to CalArts. And granted, there's a lot I need to learn still. I'm by far the best animator in the world, but I'm making money off of it. And I think I'm able to create things that are telling a story. Pick up a copy of Richard Williams' Animator's Survival Kit. It's awesome. I think most of what I learned about timing and spacing came from that book. There's also an iPad app for it, but I recommend getting the book, and then just do it. Don't be afraid. And the more you do it, you will get an inner sense for what this is. And the first times you see these things moving around on the screen in the ways that you want, it's so rewarding that it makes up for all the effort. So best wishes on your journey.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all the questions we have time for today.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. Had a good time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reuben. Thank you, Joanna, for the questions. And thank you to the audience for joining us today. For more information on Clip Studio, please check us out at clipstudio.net/en or at graphixly.com. And for more information on Reuben and what he's up to and what he's doing, please follow him on all of his social media links that are available to you right there. He's available on Instagram, Gumroad, YouTube, everywhere. So please take note of that and make sure to support him as he continues his journey into creating awesome animations and videos for all of us. Once again, Reuben, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.